One of the main things that really drew me into the Persona series as a teenager was the social life element. It was one of the first things that stood out to me when I initially heard about these games. Not only were they RPGs that took place in the modern day, but they also used regular everyday activities as a way to help demonstrate the game's core messages, with the most obvious one being social links. Persona social links are great. They're easily the most popular and enjoyable parts of each game. Every one of them tells a unique story that explores topics that almost anyone can relate to. And with the sheer number of characters there are to converse with, it can be hard to pick your favorite. Social links have gone on to define modern Persona for nearly 20 years, and it's a huge factor as to why a lot of people got invested in the series to begin with. Though for as much as I like social links and do find them to be a solid addition in the series, part of me has been wondering how necessary they are and whether or not the mechanic has run its course. This isn't some video talking about why Persona 6 should get rid of social links because they suck or whatever. Rather, I want to take a look at the social link system, see how it's evolved over the years, and highlight some of the issues that I and other people have with it. Who knows, you might learn a thing or two. But first, let me tell you about today's sponsor, Raycon. Look, let's just cut to the chase. We're all gamers here, so I think we can all agree on the importance of good audio quality. Heck, even if you're just a casual music listener, I think you also know this, which is why I'm happy to tell you about the latest installment in Raycon's everyday earbud lineup. The brand new E25s features 32 hours of battery with 8 hours of playtime, multiple sound profiles to pick depending on your preferences, and my personal favorite, active noise canceling. I do a lot of writing for my job, and I like to do that work outside of my house. Raycon's everyday earbuds are perfect for this because they deliver outstanding audio clarity while also drowning out any unwelcome background noises. The best part is that Raycon manages to achieve this at an extremely affordable price. So what are you waiting for? Head on over to buyraycon.com/noms compendium and pick yourself up a brand new pair of Raycon's everyday earbuds for 20% off. Get yourself something good while also supporting the channel too. Once again, major thanks to Raycon for sponsoring today's video. Persona 3 represented a monumental change within the franchise back when it first came out. Not only was it sort of a soft reboot of what came before it, but this was the first time a big structural shakeup would happen. We've got a new team, so with it came a fresh new visual style and gameplay mechanics. Obviously, the battle system and dungeon format was overhauled, but this is also where social links were first introduced, and for their first crack at the idea, it honestly worked out rather well. Social links were perfect for helping keep development costs low, and they're designed to help demonstrate the core themes of the franchise. Persona has always meant the masks that we wear around others. Up until this point, the games only demonstrated this through the core combat mechanics. Characters could change what personas they used, and the ones that they were able to use were determined by their personalities in the main story. But aside from this, not a whole lot was really done with the idea. When Persona 3 entered production, Katsura Hashino wanted to re-examine what Persona was, and what changes could be made to help illustrate its core themes in a more modern context. Instead of personas being solely relegated to combat encounters, they now serve a secondary purpose. They help you level up your social links faster, which grants benefits in Fusion. It fits in well with the calendar system, and Persona 3's goal of keeping unique environments at a minimum. Even though this type of system is usually seen as a side activity in other RPGs, in Persona 3's case, the social links are essentially the other half of the game. To some people, it's even the main appeal. Whenever you're not dungeon crawling, you're spending your time going to classes, hanging out with friends, raising your social stats. You might even find love if your charm is high enough. Mechanically, social links aren't the most deep or involved things in the world, but they do fit Persona 3's goals as an experience. The more relaxed nature of this portion of the game does wonders in calming the player's nerves after massive moments in the story. You get done with a big Tartarus visit where you just spent the last hour or two battling tough enemies, so having this lower stakes gameplay scenario is important in taking the edge off. Though that's not to say that social links were completely uninvolved. Yeah, there's a schedule to manage, and the dialogue options did net you more points towards that specific character, but that only matters if you want to 100% the game on your first playthrough. It's funny, for how bare the activities are in P3 compared to its sequels, I actually find that it has the most interesting social link integration. This is because, unlike later games, there are actual punishments for making mistakes. You can reverse and even outright break a social link by not being a good friend, and this has a tangible impact on the player too. Reversals act as a warning and are mostly just a slap on the wrist, and breaking a social link means you can't fuse that arcana, period. Might seem a bit harsh, but honestly, I think it's appropriate. Something that modern Persona preaches is that we should always treasure the bonds that we share with people. By making social links something that cannot be failed under any circumstances, you're removing the player agency that should come with expressing that theme. Sometimes relationships can be messy. Things don't always work out the way that you want to or planned. Look, if you're doing the one thing that these games consider to be an unforgivable sin, I think there should be a punishment. One of the most infamous parts of Persona 3 is how easy it is to accidentally reverse Yukari's social link by trying to show her physical affection at a very inappropriate time. This causes the link to be reversed, and you need to spend a few days trying to mend that issue with her. Since this happens halfway through Yukari's social link, lovers' personas get a nice chunk when fused. Even if you don't care about the gameplay benefits, you might just want to fix the social link because you like Yukari and you want to see the end of her story. A lot of people didn't like this, but honestly, I actually find it to be realistic. Misunderstandings can happen. You can do something that you think is a nice gesture, but not everyone will see it that way, and that's fine. If you're actually friends, then you can talk about the problem and make it right. I think there should be consequences for being a dickhead, especially when that attitude goes directly against what Persona stands for. Though, even in Persona 3 itself, its implementation leaves a bit to be desired. Breaking a social link is pretty hard to do, and it should be. It's super punishing if it happens, and you kinda have to go out of your way to do it. Reversals are a bit more mixed. Saying or doing something that makes your social link upset is fair game. That is unapologetically the player's fault. But neglect and jealousy can also cause reversals, and I'm not too sure how I feel about that. Jealousy makes sense. You shouldn't be trying to date two people at once. Atlas even made a whole game on why that's a bad idea. But this is also a mechanic in a game where every woman you talk to eventually becomes a romantic partner without your choice in the matter. What this means is that you're sort of punished for ranking up other social links before trying to max out the girl that you're dating. It's not like instant, but it does matter, and it's something that you have to consider with your social schedule. For the same reason, I can't quite say I'm the biggest fan of people feeling neglected. Granted, it's realistic, but it's not the good kind of realism. Some freedom should be there. In a game that has so much stuff to experience, the last thing you want is for your players to feel punished for sampling what you have to offer. I'm glad that this is something that this series dropped, but I'm disappointed that the other consequences went along with it. Persona 4 dialed back on the jealousy system severely, to the point where there's basically nothing left. There's like 2 social links in the game that could be reversed, and for one of them, it's so obviously the wrong answer that you would have to try to make it happen. Ai Ebihara is a curious case though. She might very well be the most mechanically complex social link in the franchise, featuring the opportunity for multiple reversals, outright breaking, and it's the only time where it felt as though you had to actually work for a romance in these games. If you want to rank up quickly, you kinda have to demean yourself and act totally different than you would with everyone else. Eventually, it's revealed that Ai isn't anything like she portrays herself as, almost as if she was wearing the same mask that you were. Ai stands out from every social link in the game, and I kinda wish that ones like her were the standard instead of the exception. Persona 5 would end up getting rid of reversals altogether. They were actually planned to be in the game, you can easily find footage of it, but Atlas ultimately ended up scrapping it. I get that it's not the most popular feature in the world, but I do genuinely believe that it can add a lot to the experience. Personas 4 and 5 made some rather substantial additions to social links, mainly by providing even more combat incentives to do them. I'm mainly talking about 5 here instead of 4 because that game only has benefits for party members, and P5 does it for every character. I admire this decision, and I find it to be a better motivator than just a flat fusion bonus that you won't even notice that much until you max it out. By providing tangible upgrades to Joker's abilities, it helps demonstrate how people can influence each other. We've seen plenty of examples on how we can change others, but not as many on how others can change us. The only issue I have with this change is how it impacts the game balance, but that's less of an issue with the idea and more so Persona 5 just being Persona 5. If you want to see a better implementation of Confidant abilities, then just play Metaphor. Social links might not be the most mechanically complex or even deep system out there, but I will acknowledge that I'm in the minority when it comes to really caring about that. I can imagine a world where these inter-party relationships are much more involved and have a tangible impact on the story, but it's a logistical nightmare, and probably also a literal one if you're obsessive-compulsive. There are people out there that already feel overwhelmed with the way social links are handled now, so adding even more management on top of that, just forget it. But the thing is though, because of how simple social links are inherently, we've kind of already seen the most we can realistically do with the current format. Like, we can't just add more, or else it'll become overly complicated and fans will feel alienated, or we keep things the way they are now and risk it becoming stale. Metaphor didn't make a whole lot of changes with its crack at the idea. In fact, it's arguably at its most simplistic there, since you're always guaranteed a rank up whenever you spend time with your followers. However, Metaphor has the excuse of focusing a lot more on its core gameplay mechanics, with followers being used as a vessel to aid that progression. Didn't stop people from crying about the lack of dating though. Small tangent, but I never got this. Persona romances have always been shallow. The most you're getting here are 1 or 2 bonus scenes depending on who you date, which is nice, but it's not all required to enjoy the game. At best, they're harmless fun where you can spend some extra time with your favorite characters. But in their worst form, it can muddy the game's message and be misconstrued as inadvertently supporting what it's against. I don't fully agree with that, but the fact that it's not the most uncommon opinion in the world says it all. Social links as a gameplay activity isn't the most exciting thing in the world, but it's not why you do them. Social links for a vast majority of people are used as storytelling vices, and in that sense, Persona found its footing very early. Not all of them are winners, some suffer from the 10 rank requirement, others just don't have the most interesting stories or compelling characters in the world, but more often than not, I find social links to be effective at what they're trying to accomplish. Persona 3 is a very weird and experimental game. It's not everyone's cup of tea, but if there was one thing that people always praised about it, it was the social links. There was a wide variety of memorable characters to spend your time with, and there are some pretty effective stories in here. Big fan of Mutatsu and Hidetoshi in particular. Where I think social links shine the most though, are in how they're used to expand on party members outside of the realms of the main story. In Persona 3, you only had social links with the female characters, and to this day I'm not sure why that is. Persona 4 decided to give one to every major character, and I find that to be preferable. It just makes sense, you know? For how much time the investigation team and the Phantom Thieves spend with each other, the idea that you can't hang out with them on an individual level is just stupid. Like, Ryuji, we're supposed to be friends, man. Where things start to get controversial are in the party member storylines themselves. To put it simply, Persona 3's social links were additive, while the ones in P4 and 5 are mandatory viewing if you want to see the conclusion of their character journeys. A lot of people take issue with this decision, and I can certainly see why that is. Persona 3 handled its characters mostly through the main story, while any bonus content or unresolved loose ends were saved for the side content. The other 2 games use the story to introduce the character, then leave it up to the player to do the social links to see that conclusion. I can understand why this is disappointing to some people. Because these are technically optional, the stuff that happens in them doesn't reflect at all in the main narrative. It can make social link versions of the characters sometimes feel a bit different than their main counterparts. P3 felt a bit more consistent in that regard. However, and this will be controversial, I don't think it's nearly as big of a deal as many people say it is. Firstly, you get what you put in. The power of bonds are constantly talked about in these games. In a gameplay sense, you want to do them because they help you beat the game. You want the party member social links because it makes them better in combat. That's a pretty good motivator. Secondly, these games are constantly pushing the message of how important your bonds are. By leaving key character growth up to the player's actions in-game, it helps aid that idea. These people were only ever able to get past their inner darkness because they had someone there to support them, whether that be mentally or physically. By leaving this up to the player's vices, it ends up making those characters' journeys feel all the more impactful to me. These characters managed to change who they were because I was there for them, and that feels good. It also makes the ending payoff feel all the more satisfying. You spent the whole game helping people during the hardest points of their lives, so it's nice knowing that they'll have your back when you need it too. To be clear, I'm not saying that this is the best way of doing things or even all that ideal. I personally think there should be a sweet spot between story-based and social link-based development. But what the last few games did aren't all that bad. A lot happens in the story of these games, so reserving development like this for social links gives us some breathing room to tackle it at our own pace. If all the stuff that happens in these side stories was haphazardly crammed into the main game, then it would just be a mess. Sometimes things can take a back seat if there just isn't enough room for it, and I'm at the very least grateful that an avenue to experience this stuff does exist. This brings us to the question I asked at the very start of this video. Does Persona need social links? No, it's not necessary. I could just be an asshole and say that the PS1 trilogy was fine without them, but I'm referring to what Persona is now. What makes the Persona series what it is isn't the fact that they have one gameplay mechanic that's shared with only a small handful of titles. Persona is about exploring the lives of everyday people. Despite the fantastical nature, these are grounded characters that go through issues you and I might be facing. That idea can be explored in so many different avenues, and saying that Persona needs social links to do that comes off as closed-minded. Like I said earlier, one of the goals with Persona 3 was to reinvent the franchise in a more modern context. Social links were a result of that, and I think that for the Hashino games, it worked out well. I love social links. I think they add tremendous value to these games' narratives and worlds. While I do think they lack a bit mechanically, there's a lot more good to offset that. I enjoy how they aid the world building and assist character development. Modern Persona has some of the most fleshed out side characters I've experienced, and a lot of that is because the game is able to slow down and explore it. But the thing is though, we've gotten this formula for nearly 20 years at this point. And with so many games offering social link-esque features, including other Atlus titles, it's starting to become a lot less unique. The last thing I want is for Persona 6 to be more of the same. I get that Persona is more popular than ever right now because of the newest titles, but what I don't want to see is for the franchise to fall into a repetitive loop because it's successful. Persona 6 marks the first time in a long time that we're getting a new director, and part of me hopes that this will be the start of a brand new trilogy. I like the idea of every creative leaving their unique mark on this franchise. Who knows, the new take could be even better than what we have now. I don't expect this to happen, because I can imagine it alienating a lot of current fans. I know plenty of people that outright refuse to touch games like Shin Megami Tensei because of it. While that does suck to hear, it just goes to show how important the social element is to people. While I don't think social links should be outright removed, I do think that they should be heavily altered for the next game. Maybe change the angle of approach, focus on a different aspect of bonds that have yet to be explored. What if we had a handful of the more traditional social links alongside a brand new activity for world building and character development? That could be the shakeup that's needed to help make it stand out among games like Metaphor and P3R. I'm not advocating for change just for the sake of it, but I think we are reaching the upper limits of what's possible with the current format. If Persona wants to preach the idea that change is key to personal growth, then maybe it's time for the franchise itself to give it a shot.
Give me a sec. I'll scan the target.
Alright, fine. Just like
I failed to finish it off.
I couldn't finish it off.
Use Mudo's.
Three more!